The Tide rolled Saturday night, but we've seen this before. Stick around. Let's talk about it. This is Way Offsides. 3, 2, let's go. Hey, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, whatever the case may be. Welcome to Way Offsides. Happy Monday. Alabama is 1-1 after a grotesque showing down in Tallahassee a week and a half ago or 2 weeks ago, however you want to look at it. Alabama in their home opener absolutely rolls the Louisiana Monroe Warhawks. Folks are extremely happy and satisfied with the effort and intensity that they saw in this game. And much like week one, I want to ensure that we're not overreacting. So I've got some things I want to point out and talk about. We're going to get there. But before we do, leave a big roll tide in the comment section below. Let me know where you're watching from as well while you're there. Go ahead, like, subscribe, do all the things. So too easy, right? You guys know what to do. So Alabama's game Saturday, it looked different. The team definitely looked different than how they looked on the road. Everybody is holding their breath to see if they can maintain this level of standard and excellence that they obviously brought to the field with them and Bryant Denny. Now, it wasn't just the players, it was the coaching staff, everything from the top bottom looked like what we expect Alabama to be, even without Nick Saban at the helm. The expectations are ridiculous. However, the Tide seemed to have lived up to that expectation on Saturday in their 73-0 routing of Louisiana Monroe. Now, this is the most points Alabama scored in a game in like over 50 years, I think, something like that. But looking at it, there are some similarities to some things that happened last season that I want to talk about. Before we do that, let me say I'm not trying to hate on Alabama at all. I'm trying to keep everything in focus. After the week one loss, everybody kind of panicked and lost their crap. The folks were calling for Kalen DeBoer's head, this and that. I felt like there was a lot of overreaction to the potential that FSU was a really good team. I do think that they're a very good team. I think they're a playoff caliber team. They're currently sitting at number 10 in the country, thanks to beating Alabama. So in saying that, I'm not hating on Alabama at all. I'm just trying to temper expectations and keep things in focus and give a better picture of what to expect as Alabama moves forward. Now, in the game one, a lot of the problems that existed from last year's team were still present, especially on the defensive side of the ball in stopping the run and dealing with mobile quarterbacks. The biggest difference to me was that Alabama opened on the road at Florida State as opposed to last year opening at home with a very similar opponent to Louisiana Monroe, and that was the Western Kentucky Hilltoppers. If you look at the thumbnail of this video, you'll remember the funny picture of the Hilltopper mascot standing there with a blank stare on its face as Justice Haynes runs into the end zone. So looking at the similarities between these opponents, Alabama throttled that team 63-0. They go on to play USF in a really sloppy, nasty game. They kind of put it together in the fourth quarter. They beat Georgia, and then they beat Wisconsin at Wisconsin. Then they beat Georgia. Then they lose to Vanderbilt. Now, I'm not saying Bama's going to lose to Vanderbilt this year. That game is at home. However, I'm just saying we need to keep things into perspective, and here's why. In the ULM game this week, again, very similar opponents here, Alabama had 583 total yards of offense playing three different quarterbacks. It looked really, really, really good and efficient offensively. Well, it did last year too against Western Kentucky, so much so that Alabama actually finished that game with more yardage at 600 total yards. The quarterback play was pretty solid for the Tide. Jalen Milroe went 7 for 9 for 200 yards and 3 touchdowns. Ty Simpson came in and mop-up duty, 5 for 9 for 66 yards. Now, the Alabama quarterbacks in this game all played much better. Keelan Russell's showing was very similar to Ty's last year, except that he threw 2 touchdowns. He went 4 for 6 for 65 yards. Austin Mack goes 80% at 8 for 10 for 80 yards and 2 touchdowns. And then obviously Ty Simpson goes a perfect 100% on completion rating for 226 yards and 3 touchdowns. Should have probably been 4, but we digress. Now, Alabama passed against the Western Kentucky Hilltoppers for 266 yards. That is somewhere where Alabama improved tremendously in these kind of like-minded opponents. Alabama threw for 371 yards against ULM. Now that is that's a pretty big jump. You're talking about what a 110 yard difference almost. However, what it tells me is that this offense is a little more efficient through the air than it was last year. We kind of expected that with Ty Simpson coming in as opposed to Jalen Milroe. Jalen Milroe was better on the ground. Simpson's better through the air. Now, speaking of the ground, in terms of rushing, Jalen Milroe finished as the number 2 rusher for Alabama against Western Kentucky last year, carrying the ball 10 times for 78 yards and 79 yards and 2 touchdowns. Whereas Alabama in this game primarily used their running backs. They did have some quarterbacks take off, but obviously Kevin Riley had a big game. They spread it around a good bit. Draylen Washington played well. Richard Young, Daniel Hill, A.K. Deere came in late and had a big game. So in total, Bama runs for 212 yards, and last year they run for 334 yards. So you see the handoff there between the passing game and the run game. Now, Jalen Milroe, again, a much more efficient runner, so he accounts for a big chunk of that difference, I think. And in that game, Western Kentucky, Bama finishes at 9.2 yards per play, whereas they finish a little under that at 8.4 yards a play against ULM this week. Now, that is great, talking the numbers, right? We look at first downs. We're going to go through these numbers really quick, and then we're going to talk about the X factor that I think makes the actual difference. First downs against ULM, Alabama has 29 of them, 25 against Western Kentucky. Their third down efficiency this year was 9 for 12. Fourth down, it went 2 for 2. Last year, they only had to convert 1 fourth down. They went 8 for 13 on third downs. So that's an improvement there. Maybe not a significant one, but definitely an improvement. They had 69 total plays. They had 65, and they punted 3 times against Western Kentucky. They did not punt once against the Louisiana Monroe Warhawks. Now, that is a big deal. That means Bama was scoring or turning it over on every possession. Well, guess what? They had 0 fumbles lost and 0 interceptions thrown, something that nobody's talking about right now. Ty Simpson, through 2 games, has not thrown an interception. None of Alabama's quarterbacks are. Bama did lose a fumble last year against Western Kentucky. No interceptions. Time of possession is pretty much neck and neck, 34-14 against ULM and 30-35 against Western Kentucky. So you're pretty much taking a whole drive away from that cupcake team as opposed to last year. Now, those are the numbers, right? And we can look at defensively. Things are kind of very similar. Western Kentucky had 145 total yards. ULM had 148 total yards. 103 passing yards for Western Kentucky, 55 passing yards for ULM. Western Kentucky finished with 42 rushing yards. ULM had 93. They were getting 2.2 yards per carry last year, got 3, or per play last year. They got 3 this year. I mean, everything is first downs 10-9. Third down efficiency 3 out of 18 to 6 out of 14. Fourth down 2 of 3, 0 for 1. Total plays for ULM is 50. Total plays for Western Kentucky is 67. So in that, there's a story there as well, I think, when you look at the sample size, just because ULM had more yards on the ground with less plays. They punted. ULM punted 6 times. Western Kentucky punted 9 times. Penalties were about the same. Bama was actually penalized more last year in this game than they were this year. The opponent was penalized 4 times last season. Same thing this season, 4 for 41. The turnovers, Alabama forced 3 turnovers against ULM last year. They had 2, and they were both interceptions. So very similar. That's the whole point here. That's what I'm trying to point out, is that despite what Alabama did to Western Kentucky in week 1, they still went on to kind of have a season that had people scratching their heads, especially on the road. So I think, as exciting as it is, we want to temper and maintain the expectation. A lot of people are throwing around the word national championship and this and that, and I get it. I want that too. But let's just pump the brakes and see how things go over this next week. Now, the biggest thing, though, that is not showing up on these score boxes, these box scores, I said it backwards, is the difference in visually what we saw. I went back and watched the Western Kentucky game from last year. And yes, Alabama was able to move the ball well on the ground with Jalen Milroe. However, they did not look like they could do whatever they wanted to do. And this team Saturday definitely did. They looked like they could do whatever they wanted to do whenever they wanted to do it. Whatever Ryan Grubb was calling up, it was working. I would have liked to see them run the ball a little more, kind of stick with a guy. But the intensity, and again, it started on the sideline all the way down, was there. I did not see that in the Western Kentucky last game. These kids were as hype on the sideline as the team was last year for the Georgia home game. And so if they can carry that over, I think the talk of, potentially this being a really, really special year remains the same despite what happened in week 1. The problem is Alabama's got some heavy tests coming up. Now, Georgia, that's going to be a tough one. We know that going on the road. Alabama does not play good on the road under Kalen DeBoer. I'm hoping he can right that ship at some point in time. But right now, that is the only game Alabama looks like they're not going to be favored to win. And I wouldn't be surprised if they were able to win that game. They'll get Tim Keenan back. That'll help because Gunnar Stockton, so far throughout the season, this could change, has shown to be a more efficient runner than a thrower. They run a lot of screens and things like that. So we'll see. I feel like that offense could potentially play well into Alabama's defensive hands. But again, you've got Diego Pavia coming to Tuscaloosa. They're going to go to Columbus. I can't remember which one it is. Columbia, I think, and play South Carolina and Lenore Sellers. You've got Jackson Arnold, John Mateer on the schedule. So, Bama's schedule is not favorable for them to not lose another game, right? The likelihood of them losing another game is high. Even when you take Georgia out of the mix, the likelihood is still high of them losing another game. Can Alabama get in with 3 losses? Sure, but they have to beat LSU. They have to beat Tennessee, right? They have to beat Oklahoma. They have to beat Vanderbilt. They have to beat Missouri. They have to beat South Carolina. Or you could lose to a South Carolina and then they have to beat Auburn instead, right? Assuming that they're going to lose to Georgia. But I don't think so. I think Alabama, if they come out in this Wisconsin game, especially because it's an 11 a.m. kickoff, you guys that have followed the channel for a long time, you know how I feel about 11 a.m. kickoffs. Not a fan. Teams are usually sluggish. It's like they don't want to be playing that early. It takes about 2 quarters for folks to wake up. A lot of upsets happen in that time slot. But I feel like Alabama, if they come out and show that same fire and intensity that they had last week against ULM, and it shows up and shows out on the field against a much more better quality opponent, then I think I'll be much more confident heading into SEC play. So tell me what you think. Do you think we're overreacting? Obviously, the opponent was ULM. We're trying to look at things like little that we can derive out of that game. And obviously the biggest is just that the intensity and the fire that everybody was upset about losing was there. And that's a super positive for Alabama. Obviously, it means that the coaching staff and the players have heard and understood what the problems were. And hopefully they can continue that as we move forward. Thanks for sticking around with me. As always, you guys are the absolute best. We love you. Please like, subscribe, do all the things for us. Help us out. Helps out the channel. Big live coming up this week at 8 p.m. on Thursday night. So make sure you're there. Say your prayers, read your Bibles, wash your hands, horns down, beat Auburn and LSU and Tennessee too. Roll Tide.